We've got a new showrunner, we've got a new doctor. What else can we change? Now, despite that intro, I don't want it to seem like I want everything to change about Doctor Who. I love Doctor Who. I don't want a ton of massive overhauls. There's a lot of stuff that obviously should stay the same, but there are a number of patterns that have existed in Doctor Who since it came back with Series 1 and the Ninth Doctor, Christopher Eccleston, that I would like to see broken. And I am hoping that Chris Chibnall will not continue these patterns started by Davies and continued by Moffat. So here are my list of 5 patterns that I want to see Doctor Who break, starting with Series 11. We'll start with number 5. Pretty much only classic era villains are recurring at this point. What are the villains who keep showing up over and over and over again? Daleks, Cybermen, the Master. Now, we've had a few others besides that. The Angels came back a little bit, but unfortunately they kind of got run into the ground. We had the Silence briefly, but I'm not sure that wrapped up well. But honestly, at this point, we need to have the big dun-dun-dun return. Oh, I didn't see that coming. Be something other than these things that keep coming back over and over and over again. I would like for a big holy crap moment to be something like the return of Anthony Stewart Head as Mr. Finch. Imagine if he had shown up facing down Capaldi. How awesome would that have been? There's any number of villains that could be brought back again, or heck, make some new villains and have them start reappearing. Now, this is not me saying get rid of the old villains. I know we can't, especially in the case of the Daleks. I'm well aware of the agreement with Terry Nation's estate that they have to use them in some capacity every year, but we keep defaulting back to these guys over and over and over again in terms of trying to up the stakes and having like a big villain reveal moment, when honestly, I think it would be nice to cultivate some more stuff. I love that Doctor Who goes back and refers to the old stuff, but you can't keep banking on nostalgia all the time. You've got to give us some new stuff and make the new stuff matter and make us care about it. And I feel like in terms of villains, they've kind of stopped trying and they just keep going back to this same well again and again and again. Again, I've got this one ranked number 5 on the list because it's the least solid pattern. The show has broken it from it a couple of times. Like I said, Angels, Silence, but even those were kind of short-lived at the end of the day. And I think the show just needs more. The show needs a bigger pool of recurring villains, and a bigger percentage of that pool needs to be from modern Doctor Who, not all old stuff. If for no other reason than it becomes too predictable. I'm not going to say I'm not still waiting for Omega to show up, but you would really surprise me if you brought back one of the villains that was introduced in New Who. I'd be way more thrown off by that, and that would be so much more unexpected and potentially exciting than any old villain you would care to bring back. Number 4, stop demystifying Gallifrey. Now, this is one that's really infuriating for me that the new show does, because this was a problem with the old show. When Doctor Who started, the Time Lord, heck, we didn't even know what the race was called for years, and we didn't know what the planet they were from was called for several years past that. The information we had about the Time Lords initially was really, really sparse. And then starting in Tom Baker's era and then snowballing from there, we started to get more and more and more information about them. And the more information we got about the Time Lords, the less interesting they became. And unfortunately, by extension, the less interesting the Doctor became, because we knew too much about the culture he came from. And the Doctor should have a certain air of alienness and mystery, but the more we understood about that culture, the less alien he felt. Now, I think Russell T Davies made a very wise choice with the insertion of the Time War, and Gallifrey is gone. So it reasserted all the mystery for anybody coming in. Is like, wow, what is this planet? Man, we'll never know. We get these little ideas, and we got little glimpses of it when the Master came back. Okay. And then even when the Doctor saved Gallifrey in the Day of the Doctor, I was still kind of okay with it because he saved it from destruction, yeah, but it wasn't suddenly restored. He still didn't have it there. And I was like, oh, so like him pursuing Gallifrey, that can be a very long-term goal that they then wrapped up in an incredibly haphazard way in Hellbent. That episode, this is another thing onto the pile of things that I don't like about Hellbent, but we go there and there's all these Gallifreyans hanging around looking like Little House on the Prairie in a barn. That eliminates so much mystery about this race and this planet. Stop showing us this stuff. I honestly do not think there's a great deal of narrative use to be mined out of the Time Lords anymore at this point. You got your wow punch of bringing them back, and you got your kind of triumphant moment of him saving the planet so they didn't all die. I don't think there's much more to be milked out of this that is not going to cause the problem that we got in the classic era, which is that we just know too much. And ultimately, that is an equation that doesn't balance. The more we get, the less interesting it is. Stop. Cut it off. No more. Number 3. Everybody lives. Now, despite that specific moment being shot by Christopher Eccleston being one of my favorite moments of Doctor Who ever, still to this day, it happens way too often. And I'm not necessarily talking about incidental characters and, fodder in episodes. I think we still get enough of that, and I would rather that we had more developed additional characters rather than we were killing them left and right. But the classic series had a decent body count, and at this point, we need more deaths that mean something to us. Part of the thing about the older series was because these shows were these 4, 6, sometimes 8-part or longer series that went on for a total of 2, 4, even longer number of hours. Even the characters that were introduced specifically for those stories and weren't, the companions or whatnot, we had, when the story was done well, we had the chance to get to know them so much better. So if they died, it really had a heavy amount of impact. And that is what I'm talking about. Now, the show has done this a couple of times, but it has a tendency to backtrack on it, and I'm gonna come back to that. But every now and then we get something like the death of Osgood, or a companion will die. Again, I'm gonna come back to that. But by and large, true meaningful deaths of characters don't happen often enough. Not for how long the show has been running. And again, I'm not flat out asking for a higher body count, but I think mainly I'm looking for fewer miraculous saves. And I kind of touched on this in an earlier video when I mentioned the pattern that has gone on with the companions, because every single companion of New Doctor Who, whether they left the TARDIS willingly, whether they were forced out by circumstances, whether they died, has come back and had some additional moment on top of that. The show keeps doing death and then undoing it, and that has to stop. Now, I'm not criticizing each individual instance this happened. Sometimes worked, sometimes it didn't, but let's look at the pattern. Rose trapped in another dimension. Wonderful, touching, heartbreaking. She comes back. Martha leaves the TARDIS of her own volition out of a moment that very much speaks to the strength of her character and is then brought back and does nothing particularly significant. Donna, heartbreaking, crushing moment, and then she comes back, kind of. Amy, sent to the past, lives out her life, dies. We still get this one last note, this hallucination between her and Matt Smith. Clara, oh god, hell-bent again, but she had a fantastic send-off and Face the Raven. We saw the Doctor grieve and mourn in Heaven Sent, and then hell-bent just undid all of it. And now Bill, again, converted to a Cyberman, basically killed, but gets this last-minute reprieve. We had it with River. First time we see her, she dies, but her consciousness is saved. What I'm asking for when I say stop doing Everybody Lives is let death happen and let it mean something. The Doctor can't save everyone, and when he does, any potential impact that any individual death of a character has is gone, and it becomes the problem that comic books have. There was an old saying with comic book readers that nobody stays dead except for Bucky, Uncle Ben, and Jason Todd. They don't say that anymore. You know why? Because 2 out of 3 of those things came back to life. Death has no meaning in comic books because it never sticks, and Doctor Who is coming dangerously close to doing the same thing at this point. Again, I'm not saying that it should suddenly up the body count and start killing a lot of people. I'm just saying when the decision is made to have a character die, keep them dead. Let it be sad. We can take it. Number 2, the companion template. Again, something I've talked about before. Now, this one, I'm not going to say I'm torn on, but I'm going to slightly adjust stuff that I've said before, because I've gone on record multiple times before that the current companion template is young, attractive, human female from modern Earth. Now, can't decide if we need to break from the female or not. I've certainly said in the past, please give us a male companion. I would love that. At this point, I'm a little iffy on it. And this is the one part of this particular video where I'm going to bring up the fact that the Doctor is going to be a woman in Series 11 for however long Jodie Whittaker plays the part. Now, the obvious thing to do in order to theoretically maintain some kind of balance would be to say, well, just make the companion a man. I'm not sure if I want that, because I would like to think that the decision to make the Doctor a woman is rooted in a very strong performance from her and some genuine possibilities to be mined from that change. But I don't want to see it dictate everything else about the show where you go, oh, well, the Doctor's a woman, so now we do the companion as a man. That would feel like much more of a jerk reaction to this initial decision that you made than anything else. So I'm not sure if I want that or not. So at this point, I'm going to say I'll be okay with the companion still being a woman again. But what I'm done with is for the companion to be a human from contemporary Earth. Please, enough. Look, if you don't want to go so bonkers as to have the companion be an alien, at the very least, can it be a person out of time, a person from the past, a person from the future? They can still be human, they can still be from Earth. Just do something to break this template. I mean, why do they have to be from modern day Earth anyways? Well, I know why, because it allows them to set more stories in modern day Earth, because that's cheaper and that's a budgetary concern. But it's really resulted in an incredibly samey string of companions. And no, I'm not saying all companions are identical. They've each had their own flavor. They've each brought something, but I want just a basic fundamental break from this template. And since I can't really make up my mind on whether or not I still want to no longer have a female companion, I am going to put my foot down. Please, just don't let them be from modern day Earth. There's no reason that a companion from the past couldn't wrap their head around this stuff enough to travel with a Doctor. It's happened before. Jamie with the second Doctor is one of my favorite companions ever. And a companion from the future should have an even easier time than someone from modern day would be. So just, please, Chris Chibnall, please break this one. And the number one pattern that I need Doctor Who to break from is the mystery box. Every single series of New Doctor Who has had an element of the mystery box. And by the mystery box, I mean something that is introduced early on into the series that then recurs at various intervals as the series goes along and is unexplained. And maybe we get pieces explaining it as we go. Maybe it only gets explained in like the last episode or in the setup to the finale or whatever. But it's something that they string along going, don't you want to know what this is? And I'll break it down for you. Series 1, it was Bad Wolf. Series 2, it was Torchwood. Series 3, it was John Saxon. Series 4, it was the reappearances of Rose. Series 5, the cracks in time. Series 6, actually Series 6 almost broke from it because that started with, whoa, we just saw the Doctor die. How do we prevent this from happening? But they still threw a mystery box element in because the question was, who's in the astronaut outfit? Series 7 was the Impossible Girl. Series 8 was Missy. Series 9 was the Hybrid. And of course, Series 10 was the Vault. Enough already. Now, part of this problem is that this feeds back into my first one, which is that more often than not, what is behind the mystery boxes is one of those recurring villains again that keeps happening over and over again. But I'm not even going to necessarily say that that specifically is the issue, but just this pattern of, here's this thing, we're going to string you along for the entirety of the series until we feel like revealing to you. Please stop. It has become a distraction at this point. And honestly, I was tired of it back in the Davies era. So the fact that Moffat felt the need to continue it as well has really frustrated me. And again, each individual instance, and this is true of all these patterns that I've talked about, each individual instance of this thing occurring in the show may have been good, may have even been great, but it's the fact that it keeps happening over and over and over again, and it's the repetition. And Doctor Who should not become this repetitive and this formulaic. That needs to get shaken up to some degree. Not necessarily in like a massive, let's change what Doctor Who is, but there's no reason for any of these patterns that I've listed to keep being the case over and over and over again. Now, in terms of the mystery boxes, you want a really simple template to break from? do the Buffy the Vampire Slayer model, where you make it clear fairly early on who the villain is and just have them keep reappearing, and so we're tracking them rather than some vague mystery that you're withholding the answer. Or heck, don't even do an overarching for a series. Just have it be a bunch of completely self-contained things. Again, not saying overarching can't work, but just the patterns need to get shaken up, because regardless of what anyone says about this'll kill Doctor Who, this'll kill Doctor Who, Moffat killed it, Jodie Whittaker's gonna kill it. No. Repetition, staleness, that will kill Doctor Who. And the narrative structure of the show needs to break from these patterns. I'm not saying we need to smash all the toys, but we need to find different ways to play with them than we have been. So those are my thoughts on 5 patterns that have been recurring in New Who that I think need to stop. What are your thoughts on these? Do you have any patterns that you've noticed over the course of New Who that you're kind of tired of and would like to see dropped? Whatever they are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check me out on Twitter at Council of Geeks. Give a listen to the Council of Geeks podcast, available on iTunes and Stitcher. I am also one half of the Punch Like a Girl podcast, also available on iTunes and Stitcher. Until next time, this council is adjourned.